Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis, and I hope all of you are having a good early Thanksgiving start. We've got Lock It In here on in a little bit. 4:30 Eastern, 3:30 Central, 2:30 Mountain, 1:30 Pacific. I'm about to hop a flight, head down to 30A for Thanksgiving. I hope you and yours will all have a fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. I may hop on and talk to you some during the Thanksgiving break as well if we have any major news stories break or we have a lot of fun things to discuss. But we got a lot of topics to hit here, and I want to dive in with you. We're going to talk about the college football playoff rankings. I'm going to tell you about my white-hot college football gambling picks. Talk about Mizzou getting screwed by the NCAA. Pecan pie coming in for some hot takes on what I think is the best of all of the holiday pie treats. Duke loses to Stephen F. Austin, and Donald Trump photoshops himself as Rocky. But I got to tell you, to start off here, the College Football Playoff Committee rankings, I think, are really intriguing if you look behind the surface. And what I mean by behind the surface is, on the surface, we've got Ohio State 1, LSU 2, Clemson 3, Georgia 4, and Alabama 5. Then Utah at 6, Oklahoma at 7. In the 8 spot, who do we have? Penn State, Baylor, and then whatever the rest of it is. Anyway, okay, Minnesota's in there. It's not really that complicated to figure out what's at stake, although I will tell you what exactly is at stake, okay? The big games this weekend, Georgia needs to beat Georgia Tech. LSU needs to beat Texas A&M. Ohio State versus Michigan really doesn't matter that much. Wisconsin and Minnesota, one of those teams obviously has to win the Big Ten West. And then as you look beyond those, Utah needs to beat Colorado, and Oklahoma needs to beat Oklahoma State and Bedlam. And then you need to also dive into the game with Baylor and Kansas. So we'll find out some aspects of the overall college football picture this weekend. But I think what the numbers are suggesting happened last night is this. The College Football Playoff Committee is already setting the table so they don't get a rematch in the SEC. Let me explain. If LSU stays number 1 here and stays number 1 undefeated all the way through, there's a decent chance, and I'd even mention Alabama, Auburn, and the Iron Bowl obviously is a big game as well, that Alabama could end up 4. The College Football Playoff Committee, while they say they don't care about whether rematches happen or not, I don't believe that. I think they want to avoid the idea of a rematch in the seeded round games. So I think one reason that Ohio State bumped up, even though I believe LSU has a better resume right now, is if Alabama slides in at number 4, they want to try to avoid the issues dealing with Alabama and LSU rematching to start the college football playoff. And the same thing, by the way, with Georgia. If Georgia wins, they don't want Georgia and LSU to end up 2 and 3 and immediately play a rematch of the SEC title game. They're going to try to set it up like it is now, where LSU plays Clemson and Ohio State would play Alabama, or Ohio State would play Georgia, or however that is going to be set up. Now, seeding in the college football playoff hasn't mattered at all. So far, the number 1 seed has never won the college football playoff. And so, by the way, the number 3 seed has never won the college football playoff either. The only teams that have won the college football playoff in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, 5 years of games so far, is the number 2 and the number 4 seeds. So seeding hasn't mattered at all. I'm not one of these people who gets riled up. If we had an 8-team playoff and home field advantage factored in, then seeding would matter a great deal. So far, it really hasn't changed anything based on where you are seated. You're going to have to beat 2 good teams regardless of where you are. This year, could it matter? Maybe. Maybe. If Utah gets in or Baylor got in, then being the number 1 seed would theoretically make you substantially advantaged over being the 2-3 and not getting to play against a Baylor or a Utah where you would be substantially favored. But this is going to be intriguing to follow. And I think what the College Football Playoff Committee is doing is trying to avoid the possibility of an all-SEC semifinal, which would be a rematch, and get 2 brand new games featuring powerhouses from a variety of different subjects and subplots. So I think that's the number 1 story here. I also believe if LSU wins out, they will have the superior resume over Ohio State. And I think they could end up back number 1, but it partly depends on who's number 4, because I don't think the College Football Playoff Committee wants to start off the playoff with a rematch. So that is breaking down things in general as we move through the College Football Playoff. Now, I mentioned Alabama-Auburn. I love Alabama to go into Jordan-Hare and win big against Auburn this weekend. It's rare that Nick Saban gets to play the underdog card, that no one respects us, the entire world is aligned against us, part of his resume. And I think that's what's going on here in this game. I'm not convinced at how Bo Nix has performed in big games. He wasn't good against Auburn. He wasn't that good against LSU. He wasn't good against Florida. All of these games where they have lost, even the Oregon game, which they won, he didn't play very well in. He's been a sub 50% passer. And so I believe that the big play here is Alabama. That is why, tap the veins, boys and girls, my blood bank guarantee here this week, and the blood bank guarantee has been on fire, is Alabama to cover against Auburn. 3.5, but if you want to buy it down to 3, I like that number better. All right? So that is the college football playoff picture in general. How about the college football playoff picks? Not playoff picks yet, but college football picks. Let me go ahead and hit you with these. And I've been on fire. Not the kind of guy to draw attention to myself or brag or anything of that like, but we went 8-2 last week with the college football playoff picks. Saw college football Outkick picks. We are now sitting at 54% winners on the year in Outkick. And that, my friends, is pretty freaking incredible. 54% winners. If you could win 55% consistently, you would end up as rich as Biff in Back to the Future 2. We are literally getting all of you rich this year if you just absolutely went out. All right, I have to block somebody. Anybody, like a lot of people don't understand what it means to be at 54 or 55%. If you could consistently win at a 55% rate in gambling, that's like being a 400 hitter in baseball, okay? 54% over time, 55% over time is absolutely phenomenal. And some people don't understand how fine the margin is between success and big wins. And 54 or 55%, if you can break 52.3%, you are winning money gambling. All right, the magic number is 52.3% if you factor in the VIG. If you can do 54% or 55%, you are on absolute fire. All right, so just keep that in mind. All right, here are the picks. Start tomorrow, Egg Bowl. Ole Miss against Mississippi State, I like the over. Right around 58 right now, I like the over. I think both teams come out. I like what I've seen from Ole Miss offensively. Unfortunately, they can't stop anybody who's decent. I think that Joe Moorhead wants to score some points because he's under fire a little bit. Mississippi State trying to get bowl eligible. I like the over in this one. Vanderbilt, Tennessee. This is a crazy stat for you, all right? Vanderbilt, Tennessee, this is an absolutely wild stat for you. Jeremy Pruitt has won 6 SEC games since he took over at Tennessee. Do you know how many games he's been favored in the SEC since he took over at Tennessee? 0. That's a crazy stat. In 2 years, Jeremy Pruitt has not been favored in a single SEC game. He's won 4 this year as an outright underdog. This is the first game that he has ever been favored in against Vanderbilt. It's going to be a blowout. It's not going to be close. Tennessee is going to destroy Vanderbilt. Couple of stats for you. Vanderbilt has lost its SEC games this year by an average margin of 29. On the road, they have lost by an average margin of 32.6. Jeremy Pruitt is breaking out the medieval torture machine, and he is going to put the GIMP mask on Vanderbilt. It ain't going to be a good look. You're not going to be able to hear Vanderbilt Commodore scream. It's going to be ugly and medieval on that ass, and Tennessee is going to cover with ease. Ohio State, Michigan. I love Michigan here. I absolutely love Michigan here because everybody is convinced how brilliant and superb and outstanding Ohio State is. The Buckeyes covered 8 in a row. They've now failed to cover a couple of games in a row, and I think that continues on the road in Ann Arbor. Wouldn't surprise me if Michigan wins outright. If Michigan wins outright, doesn't even knock Ohio State out of the playoff necessarily. all they would have to do is beat Wisconsin or Minnesota in the Big Ten title game. So Michigan's kind of got Ohio State's kind of got a mulligan here, but I think Michigan and Jim Harbaugh, and I've been more critical on Jim Harbaugh than probably anybody in the national media. I think they keep it close. I think they cover the 9. Wisconsin, Minnesota. I know there's weather issues up in Minnesota. I like the over in this game. Why do I like the over? Wisconsin has given up 24, 38, 22, 21, and 24 in their last 5 Big Ten games. That's an average of 25.8 games. Their defense looked a lot better early. It hasn't continued. And also, Minnesota gave up 22 to Northwestern and 23 to Iowa, which is like giving up 35-plus to most teams. I think we got a big number here in the 50s compared to where this number is. I am all in on the over in this game. Penn State going to humiliate Rutgers. James Franklin wants to go out with a beatdown on his resume to finish this season and maybe to take another job. We'll see what ends up happening there. Penn State by 45-plus. A&M, 17's too many. 17 is too many for the Aggies. I'm telling you, you need to hop on the 17 right now. LSU's been giving up too many points. They can score a lot, but I like this Aggie team. They've got 4 losses, but they're all 4 against top 10 teams. They lost by 14 to Clemson, 8 to Auburn, 19 to Alabama, 6 versus Georgia. I like A&M to cover the 17, and I like it to continue. Georgia Tech. I'll tell you this right now. I got futures tickets on the Bulldogs. I have got a lot of money riding on them. They disappointed me when they lost to South Carolina. But I'm not taking Georgia right now with that offense as a 4-touchdown favorite over anybody. All right? Right now, you can get Georgia plus the 28.5 against Georgia Tech. Games in Atlanta, back-to-back games in Atlanta coming for the Bulldogs. I know Georgia Tech's not any good, but all their games they have kept within 28 points, except they lost by, what'd they lose by? They lost big to Clemson week 1, and they got wrecked by Virginia Tech. But I like right now Georgia Tech plus the 28.5. I told you already I love Alabama. I think they win by a touchdown or more. Oklahoma State. I love Oklahoma State getting 13 points right now. I mean, I love them. Bedlam. Big rivalry game. Last 2 years, it has been 48-47 Oklahoma, 62-52 Oklahoma, and this is significant. Last 3 games combined, Oklahoma has won by 8 points. They beat Iowa State by 1. They beat Baylor by 3. They beat TCU by 4. Why in the world in a big rivalry game against Mike Gundy would the Sooners be a 13-point favorite in this game? It's way too many. I like Oklahoma State to cover here. Finally, Florida State, Florida. I like the Gators to come out and absolutely dominate. Absolutely love the Gators to come out here and dominate to take down the Florida State Seminoles. I am on the Gators big as well. All right. Enjoying all of you. That is my college football gambling predictions. I have got 10. By the way, this loser who keeps saying Vandy will cover easily, blocked. If you say something and you keep saying the same thing over and over and over again, and I happen to look over and I happen to see you, we don't need to keep seeing the same comment from you. You don't have the right to continue to comment in the show. If you're boring and you say the same thing over and over again and I happen to notice it, you're gone. You're blocked. You won't be allowed to return forever. Clay Kyle is in here. He's got a locked and loaded gun. I don't read most of the comments, but if I see you and I recognize you and you're saying the same thing over and over and over again, nobody wants to see that. Get it. You have an opinion on who's going to win a game. That's fine. I have an opinion on who's going to win a game, but I don't keep saying the same opinion over and over and over again on the same game. All right? Got to be honest with you. All right. We got into a Mizzou. We got to talk about Mizzou. Mizzou got absolutely screwed by the NCAA. And I want to call out the NCAA here because I think their precedent stinks. I think they were cowardly. I think that in the grand scheme of things, they waited to see how Mizzou's season was going to go. And then they decided to drop the hammer on Mizzou when they saw that they were 5-6 and they weren't going to go to a good bowl game. This would be a massive story, guys. If Mizzou had been good enough to be contending for the SEC championship, and then the week before the season ends, the NCAA comes in and says, hey, you're not allowed to play in the SEC title game. In many ways, Mizzou losing all the games that they did made it easier, but these kids still deserve a right, if they beat Arkansas, which they should, to be able to go and go to a bowl game. And the way that Mizzou handled this, I thought, was as classy and well done as you could. I think what happens now is you have disincentivized schools from ever cooperating with the NCAA. It's a minor detail that they got flagged for. And it happened years and years ago, and you're punishing the current student athletes. It flat out doesn't seem fair to me. And so if I'm a Mizzou fan, I am furious about this. It is the NCAA manages to rule on all these other appeals rapidly, right? Whether you agree or disagree with James Wiseman, whether you agree or disagree with Chase Young, they got those situations resolved in rapid fire time. They sat on this Mizzou story forever, and then they decide to come parachuting in the week of the final season when Mizzou's got a game in 2 days and just dropped an absolutely ludicrous ruling on them. I don't think it's fair, and I believe that Mizzou fans have a right to be furious on what happened. Duke last night lost to Stephen A. Austin. Stephen A. Austin, if you're not familiar, the president of the Republic of Texas before Texas became a state. It was an independent country for, I believe, a decade-ish. And Stephen F. Austin was the first president. Biggest win for Stephen F. Austin since the 19th century. Congrats to Stephen F. Austin. Maybe this augurs an absolutely wild college basketball season this year, because already at Rupp Arena, Kentucky has lost to Evansville, and now Duke has lost to Stephen F. Austin. Stephen Austin put the F in Austin when they hit that layup to win. Congratulations to the Lumberjacks, I believe it is. This was a huge upset, and I think, again, it could augur for a crazy, wild season in college basketball if there's that little difference between the tops and the bottoms of the conference. And this is the first time Duke lost at home to a non-conference opponent in 150 games, going all the way back to 2000. So we'll see what ends up happening right now, but that's a good sign for college basketball, even though it's only November. Finally, a couple of other things. Donald Trump tweeted out a Photoshop of himself as Rocky IV. I don't know sometimes what Trump decides to do or why he decides to do it, but this was a really funny Photoshop. I think the one thing about Trump that has been underrated is he's got a decent sense of humor. All right? The guy has a decent sense of humor. There might be lots of things you don't like about him, but I think a lot of times his tweets need to be read with a sense of humor. I don't think he's always being 100% serious. Now, you can say that he shouldn't be behaving in that way, that it's not presidential, all of those things. I certainly understand that criticism. But it's actually pretty funny. Just like when he tweeted himself as a wrestler clotheslining CNN, that image, I think it was a couple of years ago, I actually find his Twitter feed to be pretty entertaining at times. And a lot of times when he's going on long screeds, I don't read them all. But it is pretty entertaining. The Rocky IV Donald Trump ripped position was funny because the media is constantly saying he's in bad health and everything else. I think that was funny. Putting the medal on the dog was also very funny. I mean, I don't know how you cannot find that to be funny, right? Whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, that's legitimately a funny thing to do. Finally, I will go all in on pecan pie as the best dish for Thanksgiving. There's a lot of criticism, been a lot of negative feedback rolling my way. Ever since this morning on Outkick AM, our radio show, we had a Thanksgiving food draft, and I came by and I said, I'm all in, number one overall pick, pecan pie. If you are not a pecan pie fan, I would suggest you're a communist. I would suggest that potentially, like Rachel Bonnetta on Lock It In, you are a Canadian who cannot be trusted. Pecan pie is the number one choice of everyone with a soul, every red-blooded American man and woman for Thanksgiving when it comes to dessert options. Cobbler gives it a challenge, but it has the requisite heft for an autumn meal. I am all in on pecan pie. And you pronounce it pecan, not pecan. All right? I love all of you. My name is Clay Travis. This is Outkick the Show. I hope all of you have fantastic Thanksgivings. If I don't talk to you tomorrow, I got to go do television now. Lock It In comes on momentarily. Pumpkin pie rules. And your favorite treat, if it's not pumpkin pie, well, let's be honest, it drools. Kisses, DBAP, unless you got an SBAP. I am Clay Travis, and this has been Outkick the Show. Love you. Thank you, Facebook. See y'all.